Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 85 of the show, and in this edition we're going back to the world of Leon S. Kennedy government agents with the most recent print in the RE series. It's Comic Book Club, Resident Evil, Infinite Darkness, The Beginning. That's a lot of colons. My name is Sai, and joining me on the panel this week, Infinite Darkness, more like Infinite Dorkness, it's Moist Owlet, aka James. He's got a baby on the way, just call him Infinite Dadness. It's Fire Button Steve Valance.
Oh, hi everybody.
And returning to the podcast to drag himself through another episode of Infinite Darkness, could prove to be Infinite Sadness. It's Kelsey, aka KDB.
Hello, isn't dork like a whale's penis? I'm pretty sure that's where the word comes from. I just wanted to get that in.
We all just learned something.
Yep.
First Aid Spray is recorded in front of a live Discord server audience, so join now to hear the show early and unedited and to become part of our wonderful little community where we discuss life, the universe, and Resident Evil. You can find the server and all of our social media links at our website, faspraypod.com. That's where you can also find our merchandise store and our Patreon page. First Aid Spray is nothing without our supporters. Tiers begin at just $1 a month with a host of benefits. Head over to patreon.com/faspraypod to support the show. No news from us, so Steve, why don't you take us into the headlines?
Hold on to your butts. Resident Evil 7 on iOS has been a colossal commercial failure, selling less than 2,000 units.
Yeah, not a lot of news going on right now, but this was definitely reported on by a lot of places, so I guess it's worth us picking it up as well. I think we talked about it in the most recent episode before this one, that it was going to come out. And maybe it's a good thing that games are available everywhere, but when you think about it, nobody really wants to play this game, this horror, atmospheric, immersive horror game on a phone. And when you see footage of it and screenshots of the controller overlay over the screen, that definitely doesn't do it any favors. Video Game Chronicle have written here, which is a very astute point, that RE7 went on sale at sort of $20, £20, and on PS4 you can pick up a copy for $14, so you'd be paying more to play it on iOS, which is almost certainly a lesser version. And yes, that seems to be the case because it has sold extremely poorly. Kelsey, are we surprised?
No, not at all. I remember we talked about this back in the past. I think all of us were just unanimously negative towards it. And like you said, games everywhere is a good thing. It's absolutely a good thing, but not if they are unplayable and kind of presented in a format which I think is a detriment to the entire experience, which is what this is. I'm hard line against it. I think it's stupid. It's a waste of money. I am interested into how it happened, because I wonder if this cost Capcom anything, and I think this is more of a case of Apple paying for it to be on the devices sort of for them. So I don't think Capcom care too much. They probably made money out of this, and it's Apple that are losing money. And I said before, with this and with the RE4 remake, you're just better off buying an Xbox Series S for £200 and then buying the game, because that's not a lot of money when you consider the phone itself costs £1,000, and it's just, it's pointless. And no, not surprising at all.
MobileGamer.biz came through with some interesting figures on it. Apparently, according to App Magic, which they've used at the time of their writing, it was downloaded 83,000 times when it was released in July, but you do need to unlock the full game with for the £20 after that. So the figure therein is how many people have paid for that. And yes, Apple take a 30% cut, so you got to wonder what the quote unquote budget for this port was, and if Capcom do still see a return regardless, if it was a very cheaply made port or what, who knows. But it's all very interesting stuff. James, any more thoughts on our RE7 iOS?
Sorry, I was muted.
I just take that as a no.
I find it really strange I find it really odd where mobile gaming is right now. You're in a place where beforehand people were very gullible and they would put their money down for these mobile games. It's because they were new IPs on mobile games.
Sure.
And they are still earning a lot of money but it's mainly due to OG games that are on those devices.
Yes.
Expecting people to pay 20 quid for a mobile on a mobile game. That's wild. The most I've ever spent are on apps on my mobile app on my Google Store, and they've been like 3-4 quid. That's the most I've spent, and that is extravagant for me.
Yeah.
So like expecting someone to pay 20 quid for a lesser experience is absolutely wild.
Yep. For an experience that, yes, was on last gen, is on this gen, it's on Switch now, it's on PC, it's regularly on sale. Very odd. The most successful mobile games are always things that are designed for mobile. I don't think we've had a console game come to phone yet and actually be a success in its own right that I can think of. Nothing sticks out in my mind. Steve, any more thoughts on... Oh, sorry, go on, James.
I think there was a GTA that did quite well.
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
There was an older GTA that did quite well. But like it again, you're losing the experience, aren't you?
I'll have you know, turn-based masterclass that was XCOM, Enemy Unknown, was actually pretty good on mobile phone. But anyway, I'm going to devil's advocate a little because it's always good to get it on more storefronts.
Yeah,
it may not be the greatest port, but I feel like I totally agree with everybody, by the way. I'm just doing this because I have to get these points across. How many mobile games are not filled to the gills with microtransactions and all these other things?
Hey, that's a good point.
This would be a full, if this had came out somehow earlier in a mobile phone's life cycle and ecosystem, it'd be a banger. But unfortunately, we live in a post-like gacha game and mobile game world, so it's kind of been left by the wayside as an inferior console port. That being said, I feel like this is hopefully not a complete waste of investment on Capcom. I hope it was like, Apple paid them to make it. If nothing else, a tech demo of RE Engine on the platform. So for my money, I feel like it's wasted opportunity because you could have figured out a way to emulate VR tech. Because I know it's like cardboard box VR for iPhones or whatever, isn't there? So having some version of Resident Evil 7 in VR that isn't specifically locked to the PlayStation or mods on PC would have been an easy W, but unfortunately.
Yeah. Sort of sticking with sales numbers and Resident Evil 7 specifically, it's worth throwing in as well. Within the last couple of days, we've had just a bit of an update on sales numbers across the board with Resident Evil. So just chuck it in. The RE7 is still fourth overall for Capcom Platinum titles at 13.3 million. So Resident Evil 2 Remake still the king, 13.9 when it comes to Capcom sales, the third most successful Capcom game sales-wise. But in terms of Resident Evil, I guess the big news is that Remake 4 has officially landed in the top 15, selling 7 million units in its first year and a little bit, I guess, not even quite a year and a half yet. And overall, the series has now crossed the 160 million unit threshold. So strength to strength. I think there's a lot of talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake possibly being the fastest selling remake so far. I think that's the understanding. So it's expected to continue to climb that. Really wouldn't be a surprise if it gets into the top 10. It's competing with Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which is only a few years old, admittedly, but there's a new game on the horizon, and Street Fighter V, which is obviously not going to be selling a lot of copies at this point, considering it's nearly 10 years old. So yeah, that's at least some nice sales news. So with that out of the way then, let's jump into this episode's main subject, which is Comic Club Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, The Beginning. So dumb. And now, reading the file Facts from Resident Evil 1996, Rain Reeves Pearson, who you can find on Instagram at notorious_RRP.
2. General Manager of Sanitation Division. From Special Committee on Disasters, Raccoon Special Research Department. This memorandum is strictly confidential and must be destroyed as soon as it is understood. Regarding the T-virus outbreak, which occurred recently, this committee conducted a field survey. According to the results, estimates on the amount of damage caused by the accident are considerably greater than reported earlier. First, although it is very difficult to obtain accurate data in terms of actual numbers, it is thought that more than half of the researchers died after exposure to the T-virus. The body count will almost likely increase since nearly all of the survivors show symptoms peculiar to the T-virus. Second, our security system is still in operation. However, Our special security guard squad has been nearly destroyed. Because of that, research information considered by our company to be top secret has been made available to outsiders. Countermeasures should be taken as soon as possible. Finally, many of the subjects from the experiments have escaped and are out of control. We believe that some of the researchers were killed by these subjects and their bodies were mutilated. By curious coincidence, these events are proof of the success of our research. However, there is also a very high risk that this news may be leaked to the press if we don't act immediately. The condition is very serious. Our operation to cover up the situation is difficult to attain. However, we hope the problem will be solved quickly. We are especially concerned that the state police and STARS are intervening too quickly. We need to act on this situation as well.
It's finally here for all the people that care. I've been saying that we were going to be doing this since it was announced in 2021, I guess, alongside Infinite Darkness, the CGI Netflix series. If you can remember it, feels like a whole other lifetime ago. But yes, there was going to be a companion comic book. It was expected to launch in 2021 as well, but it was pushed back over the course of a year. But we do have Resident Evil Infinite Darkness at the beginning in its entirety now, issue 1 releasing in December 2022, and issue 5, the most recent, coming out January 2024 with a trade paperback sort of collection of all 5 issues releasing February this year as well. So it is all out now and available. So since it is out, let's do it. I love a comic club episode. It's always time for chaos. And I guess it is kind of nice that we get to do something brand new with Comic Club. We're not looking back on weird oddities from 20 years ago. This is hot-ish, off the presses-ish, by Tokyo Pop. The story was written by Keith R.A. DiCandido, and I guess we'll get into that a little bit later, with Carmelo Zagriara as a lead penciler and some few other names in there as well. So let's just dive into it, I guess. What do we all think of Infinite Darkness at the beginning? Always judging books by their covers. Let's start with the art style of this. Can be a bit make or break. I'm just going to go on a tangent because I know this episode is going to be short, so we've got room for it. There was a recent Ghostbusters comic book run, which was fine, but all you'll get from people online talking about it is, I hate the art style to this. So the way a comic book looks, obviously very, very important. Let's get into how we thought about Infinite Darkness at the beginning. Visually, Steve, what were your first impressions of the way the comic book looks?
It reminded me a lot of The Walking Dead. Like, not specifically the box art, the cover pages. The more inside the comic look of the comic had that kind of feel, a bit grittier. Generally speaking, aesthetically, I think it's probably its strongest point. But we'll get there. It's a nice, tasteful collage. Most characters look on point, though from certain angles, at certain light, Leon looks like a shaved Alan Wake. So there is that. It's okay. It's okay aesthetically speaking. Aesthetically speaking, it's okay. It's not getting any big gold ribbons. It's not got the absurdity of the manhwa Chris Redfield Super Saiyan. But I'll take it over the Wildstorm stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. One of the things I wrote down is that there are a lot of characters in this, and we'll definitely get to that as well. But the main sort of key cast members, like Leon, like his new partner, and a few others, are very they're distinct enough to stand out. Like, that they're key. They always look like them. You're never confused about, is that this guy? It's all very consistent in that way. So that's, very important as well. Yeah, I'd say I like it, broadly speaking. There's a lot of use of shadows on faces in this, which is mostly good, but sometimes when you look at it, that doesn't really make any sense. The shadows there, they just kind of look like they're there without too much thought into it. But largely, didn't have an issue. Kelsey, what did you think of the art for this?
It's decent. It's decent enough. I kind of agree with both of you. Like the shadow thing as well, it makes a lot of it look quite ugly, unfortunately. I don't think it, like when I think of Resident Evil, I think of it as a bit more squidgy. This is quite, if
Angular.
that makes sense. This is very sharp and very dark. Leon looks like he's pretty much every image of him looks like he's like sucking on a lemon sweet, and I don't know what's going on there. But so I've got the the compilation book. I don't have the individual issues, and on the front cover, it's got one of the, like the not great like Marvel style covers where there's just like lots of faces and people pointing weapons in different directions and stuff like that, and it's not great. But then in the back of this, it's got the variant covers, and some of them are fantastic. Like they really are. There's one here, and this is terrible for an audio podcast, I know. Where there's a couple of characters, Leon and two police officer characters, and it's in a style that is not the style that the comic is in, and there's loads of zombies around them. This looks really good. There's also one of a police, I don't know if it's a police officer character that's not supposed to be Leon, or if it's just a really weird take on Leon, and he's got a giant zombie head behind him. That also looks amazing. So the best part about it is kind of those variant covers. The comic itself it's fine. Like it's not bad by any means. It's not terrible. It's very high quality. It's just not necessarily a style that I massively enjoy. There is lots of really good panels throughout. One of my favorites is there's a zombie being shot through the head and its eye is coming out with the bullet, which is quite good. And there's moments like that where the art works really well. I think it works better for the zombies than it does for the non-infected characters.
Yeah.
And yes, like you said, some of the shadows is just really, really weird, a bit overdone, but perfectly competent, decent enough, just not really to my taste. It is like Walking Dead, like Steve said. I think I prefer a bit more kind of just classic boulder style, if you like, curvy, if you like, squidgy, as I said. So yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I think I might be the only one here that bought them as individual issues, so I actually have some nice full-page cover art to look at, and generally I think they're all the standard cover art on mine, and they're all pretty good. There are some, when you look up variant covers, that are pretty hit and miss. There's one with Leon sort of running, firing a gun off screen and nothing else going on, which is very boring and also not particularly, it doesn't really go up to the same kind of level of quality as you'd expect. But some of them are pretty decent. Yeah. James, what did you think of the art?
Mute again. It's the heat, guys. I'm going to blame it on the sun. So, yeah, actually, Kels, you brought a subject ahead. I was going to talk about this. I love variant covers. I don't collect them that much, but I like looking at them, obviously. And I'm going to stick it in chat. And I know, like, if you were here to listen, you'd see it live. But, yeah, the one that Kels highlighted where, I love that because... Yeah, because it feels Resident Evil. Like there's there's always a zombie turning, and what will happen after that zombie turns, And I like this rendition of Leon too. He feels more baby face here, because this is only a few years. Oh wait, no, it's 8 years after the. Yeah, so I mean it is a bit, but. Yeah, I still like I like that version of Leon, which we don't get in this comic, but yeah, I like that one. The rest, none of the rest really stood out to me when it comes to the covers, but yeah, they were fine. Averaging above mid. The artwork itself, I really, really, really like because I like, especially when it comes to horror. And wounds and injuries. I like sketchy art. I like stuff that it has a lot of detail, and when I was every time there was like a bullet wound or there was a bite or something like that, I would really get in on the panel and be like, oh, look at all that detail, it's gross. And they did the work. They did the work there. They put those sketchy lines in. They did great with the colors as well, I think. There were some faces that were a bit odd and didn't really make sense for the whatever was happening.
Right.
There was a dude in the museum. No, it wasn't the museum. It was a community center who he apparently was blaring, but he had just had like a straight face. And I'll talk about that later as well when we talk about the issue to issue. But yeah, I really, really, it's as Steve said earlier, it's the strongest point for me. It's very good. I like this stuff, like the Dark Horse Alien stuff, in the early 2010s and leading up to when they lost the license. was all that very dark, sketchy stuff. I do understand the shadow stuff. I think if you're gonna add shadow, you should keep to the shadow. Like, because it is, again, like, just as it is with TV shows and movies, horror really plays well with shadows, right? So you can't just like have a page that is just one half shadow, like, and try and make it very serious and horror, and then everything else is very bright. I would have liked if they just kept with the sketchy lines, made it dark, kept it dark, kept it moody. I think it would have done well, but they didn't do that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's definitely the strongest point for me is the artwork overall.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, James, about expressions, because you might potentially hear me leafing through them in the background, so for that I apologise. But yeah, literally just opened on issue 3, and there's a character going, "Oh God, I left this guy in the basement where there was an explosion," and his expression is just like he's almost like he's smiling. He doesn't look really worried about it. So
that's the guy. Yeah, that's the guy I was talking about. Yeah,
like, did I land right on the thing, or is there another one? But yeah, okay, fair enough.
I mean, there's probably more because like several times I would stop at a page and go, "That's not what's happening here."
I think that aside. The thing for me is sometimes comics can have very confusing compositions of stuff where they're trying to blend things going on stylistically. And I didn't think there was... It's very easy to look at. There was no confusion about what I was looking at any point. It was all very readable. Sometimes quite dull. One of the things that I really enjoyed, I realised as I looked through this from the previous comics that we've talked about, is like we talked about it a little bit in those episodes, but like big splash pages of something going on. Here's a big moment, it takes up a whole page, maybe even a whole 2 pages from left to right. And there's almost none of that in this entire series. There's a couple of bigger panels, of course, all panel sizes are different, but I don't think there's a single moment that takes up an entire page, which I thought was kind of a shame because I like stuff like that, but maybe that's a personal qualm.
No. I like that stuff too in my comics because I think that kind of like in books and in movies you have acts, right? And you have act starting and act ending moments. And I think big double cover, big bombastic kind of art pieces, they really lend to the chapter or arc slash act part of a story in a comic. So
it's a way to pace things. As well, in terms of using the art and not words so much as like, this is a big moment. You'll remember this moment. So, yeah. Is what it is. Okay, we'll crack on then into the story, which is obviously the main thing. We'll go, as we usually do with this, issue by issue. So, starting with issue 1, which is about Leon S. Kennedy investigating a bomb which is triggered at the Carnegie Museum of Art in Pittsburgh, which is set off the night before the opening of a new exhibit. Leon mentions that it's suspected that the bomb is similar to one that he's dealt with before, potentially from a group that he's dealt with before, to the local police there. His investigation, alongside his new partner, police officer Joseph Pascazzi, investigate the home of Max Storm, newbie museum security guard, and then they are shot at by him as he flees. That is essentially the story of issue 1. I probably should say, I guess, moving forward, that we will be talking full spoilers for every issue, as we do with everything on this show. So you are warned now. What do we think of issue 1 of Infinite Darkness, the beginning? James, let's start with you. Let me ask you a question then.
I know this bomb. This bomb I know personally. Me and this bomb, I know this bomb so
way
well.
Back.
Yeah, we I'm going to completely ruin the beginning, this Origins comic by saying I know this from another time that I did things.
Waiting for Infinite Darkness, the beginning.
The origins of the beginning. It was so annoying to hear him. And I'll talk about, because I mean, one of my most annoying things about him, I'll talk about it later because he does it all the time. But yeah, so like Leon, so we learn a lot of nothing, but we learn a lot in issue 1, and that is that Leon, is a hotshot, whatever, and there's this bomb, and he's brought in, and he doesn't tell anybody what he thinks the bomb is until it explodes.
Yeah. There's a lot of withholding information from every other character and the audience.
Yeah,
it's
speaking
classified.
of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, then when dead people start turning up, which he should have expected, and he did expect, except he did it after the fact. Who gaslit this? Gaslit? No, I'm trying to gaslight myself.
Greenlit.
Greenlit this. Like he calls in for emergencies. You are the reinforcements, Leon.
Yeah, the government sends this one dude
To
to deal with the bomb threat.
And then, like, on top of that, just in case you haven't figured out, by the way, I do not like this comic. It's bad overall, right? So just put that preface out there. Like, but the next thing that annoyed me was just like we get these like scene to scene moments where you'll see Leon doing his thing and speaking to people because that's all he does in this freaking comic, right? And then the next page it'll be a panel full of the bad guys being baddies, which is fine. I love that. It's just that they sound really organized and like they have a plan. It's that they didn't decide to screw the vent cover back on.
It's a very good point.
The massive vent, you know.
Very good point.
It was so infuriating to see all these small things. Like, I know other people are like, well, you're thinking too deep, James. But you're thinking like the comic's trying to tell you that these guys, this goes up to government level. Like, this is huge. These people are very well organized, and like, you know, it didn't feel like it was within universe. It felt, oh, well, this is here literally so that woman could look in there and go, oh, boom, you know. And then die, and then turn into a pickle. You know, this is what happens, by the way, when I don't write full paragraphs of notes. I just go off. But yeah, like this first issue, there's just like a lot of inconsistencies with the story that didn't make sense. Nothing gelled, and that's probably going to be a common thing I'm going to talk about throughout the entire story of this. But yeah, I'll let other folks pop on and talk about how bad this is.
You went in a very different direction to what I was expecting, which is I'm very thankful for. Because I was just going to ask everyone, you know, if you if you picked this comic book up and someone had torn out the last page of it, would you have really any inkling that this was a Resident Evil story? Like Leon, sure, Leon looks like Leon, I'll give it that, and sure, he looks all right. It's okay, you know, he's a chiseled white man in a suit, which is lots of protagonists in many things. But there is no monsters in this story until the last page when the pickle gets back up, if you like. That's what we're calling it. From the off, it's like, where the hell is this going and what has this got to do with... I don't want to be one of those people where it's like, oh, Resident Evil, we just need this X, Y, and Z to be Resident Evil. But if you've got 5 issues to tie into an animated series about zombies, you should probably put some zombies in it instead of accidentally sneezing one onto the last panel. I've got to say a couple of notes, but I'll bounce to someone else. Kelsey, what did you think of issue 1?
Yeah, you've basically taken the words out of my mouth. Like, James has touched on a lot of like what happens. My main issue really is, or the main 2 issues are the structure of issue 1 and the way it's written in terms of the dialogue. So I'm not a fan of the way it opens, and I think the way it ends, and not to jump too far ahead here, but the way issue 2 opens is how issue 1 should have opened, because that sets the scene of Resident Evil. But instead, you've got to go through this, you know, museum workers, bomb going off, Leon chatting to lots of people and talking utter nonsense. Like, and yeah, so they could have had the zombie waking up and then attacking the doctors and nurses, and then we could have done like a 3 hours earlier type thing, and then seen some of this that it opens with, you know, and then it could have finished with her getting blown up. So I had a big issue with the structure because it doesn't make it engaging from the get-go, and it just doesn't feel Resident Evil. And then aside from that, like the some of the dialogue, like the talking dialogue, is just every character sounds the same. It's very kind of exposition-y. They're all sort of saying the obvious with like no personality. And I was reading it just like, is anyone going to sort of, you know, I just want some bit of character, some bit of subtle, or like a quippy one-liner or anything. But there's just things like the quippiest that Leon gets is he says, "Call me Leon," when she says Agent Kennedy. He's like, "No, call me Leon." And then he says a couple of things which just, they're incredibly dumb. Like, "I know you're not going to like this, but I think this might be an inside job." And then a few panels later, he's like, "I hope for your sakes it's not someone on the inside, but the odds are that it's pretty good that it's someone on the inside." And it's just like, there is this constant, like, and it even opens with like the guards talking, oh yeah, most people were asking where the restrooms are, which is like, yeah, fine. But then the following bit of dialogue is, yeah, that sounds about right. And it's just, it just sort of drags and drags and drags with lots of nonsense. What else is there? Yeah, when Leon says that's classified, and like we've touched on, he's just keeping secrets from everybody. There's just this constant stream of like really unimaginative dialogue. And I know like graphic novels have to do a lot of thinking out loud because, you know, there's no music or like sound effects and things like that. So they have to do that, and it's kind of quite common, but it just felt broadly uninteresting and lifeless. As I say, they all sounded the same. And yeah, I was really annoyed with it just opens really sort of in a really boring way when it could have opened with a zombie attack. Not necessarily the zombie attack from the start of issue 2, but something else, another zombie attack, or this previous bomb that Leon's had a relationship with. Like, you know, show us something that's going on there and some other zombies. And yeah, just issue 1 was weird. And I've definitely got a few more positive things to say as we go on, but yeah, not a big fan of, if you're going to kick off the comic, I think this was not a strong way to do it.
Yeah, it's you're right in terms of how they probably should have structured it. It's meant to be like an exposition issue to set things up, but it just kind of fails at that. Like there's 30% of the exposition that you actually need in this issue. The rest of it is just nonsense. And it's really funny because, as I say, I picked up these issues individually, had them delivered to my house. I was like, oh, issue 1's here. I'm going to read it right away. And I immediately, after the first issue, was like, I'm going to wait till all the rest are here before I read them, because I don't want to be waiting months to read the next issue and have to remember what on earth happened between each one, especially because there was a bunch of delays between issues, which, as is the way, of course. But I was like, this is so deeply unengaging that I will have no idea what's coming. You know, when the next issue comes in 3 months, I'll be like, I don't know what was going on. So I don't want to have to reread them all the time. So I was like, I read issue 1 and was like, I'm just going to wait till they're all here, because I don't care already. I already feel like this is going to be a waste of my time. And yeah, let's just say it's going to be one of those podcast episodes. Steve, how did you find issue 1? Did you love it?
Oh yeah, it totally changed my life. Like, it rewrote my feelings on Resident Evil for the better, let me tell you. No. 5 pages. You have to get through 5 pages of exposition and small talk before anything happens. Like, most comics, especially these days, you know, you get like maybe 20, maybe 25 pages each, tops. Like, and you know, in a non-big thing, you know, like Marvel, like Avengers, this, and this, probably a bit bigger. But for a small thing like this, that's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, all I really remember is that the lady's name was Monica, because I kept thinking, she's losing electromagnetic pressure. You know, literally an Outbreak reference is more engaging than the entirety of episode 1, or rather, you know, volume 1. Leon is straight from Degeneration. Like that's my general vibe. In fact, most characters could be argued to be from Degeneration if they were there. You know, that kind of level of wood, a little bit of balsa or oak in their personality. I want to like Pascazi. I really did. Like, you know, the idea of Leon having to foil up against a detective who's a bit out of their water but willing to learn. But we don't get that, especially not here. It's just it's classified. Oh, cheers, Cartman. Thanks. Yeah. And then the bomb goes off. And much like my colleagues, I can think that there's a distinct lack of weapons of the biologically organic variety in this volume. I can understand it from one perspective in that, you know, you've got to build a bit of a story up, get it going. But yes, I am on the same page. There should have been some kind of in media res moment or some kind of inciting incident that did take 5 bloody pages to get to.
Yeah.
So yeah, volume 1, a bit of a clanger.
It's really funny as well. It's worth pointing out that Pascazi and that relationship with Leon doesn't really get to develop because he gets shot at the end of issue 1, and then that's basically it. Like, he's in hospital for the rest of the story. So good luck trying to work around that. My only other notes on issue 1 is Max Storm is such a hilarious bad guy name, which is funny because it's not even the bad guy's name. It's somebody else, his identity that he's using. So which is just dumb.
He comments on it. He's like, Frank Wright, assuming that's any more your name than Max Storm. It's just like this constant like nonsense coming out of Leon's mouth.
And I just also did want to shout out to Monica, a very rare Resident Evil female character. with a different body type to everyone else. That's nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
She dies instantly. So, Alexa, play I Will Remember You. And we move on with our lives. As we do, moving on to issue 2, the reanimated corpse of Monica, caught in the bomb blast, attacks those attending to her at the morgue. Leon finds a map at Frank Wright, not Max Storm's hideout, which is circled Frick Park. Hilarious name. Leon intends to go there, but he's sidetracked by the T-virus infection breaking out at the ME. Frank Wright meets up with a man in a diner, and they talk about their holy mission. A second bomb explodes at the community centre to close out issue 2. Feel like a lot of stuff happens in this issue, at least, especially just reading that synopsis. We are moving, we are going places. I don't feel like really any of it meant much to me as the reader at this point, because again, I hadn't really been told who was who and what was going on. The holy mission, for what it's worth, is to reduce population, of course. Why not? It's a generic enough bad guy plan for a comic book. It works. Sure. There are zombies in this one. It is worth pointing that. And also, Leon meets a hobo for some reason. This issue is just a breakneck insanity, completely lacking in substance. Steve, what did you make of issue 2?
Now that you mention it, the fact that Leon meeting a hobo is what foils their plan is the falling dominoes. That's kind of impressive. This is mostly like one long battle, it feels like. We keep cutting in and out of the ME like, oh, they've almost resolved it. Then we come back, oh no, the people who thought they resolved it are now zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the next responders are zombies. And then the next responders are zombies. And like, okay, that's nice. Eventually it gets quelled because Leon shows up and tells you shoot them in the head. A lot of reticence as well. I feel like this is the main one where everyone's like, oh no, I know that person, please don't shoot them. And then they get bit. And then they got shot. We're introduced to Congresswoman, whose name I've already forgotten, and allegedly she's an important character. I guess the Congresswoman for Pittsburgh is good enough, but...
It's all right, Steve. You're not alone. I don't know most of the names of the cast in this, so... And I'm meant to be hosting this thing, so...
What kind of
Eloise
Malthusian
Falk?
crap? Eloise is the...
She's someone else.
That's Wilson's person.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
That's evil CEO.
Yeah, that's the surviving villain of the comic who won't be in anything else. Spoilers. But no, what kind of motivation is this? I feel like what was Veltro's motivation in Revelations? I can barely remember that. Something about artificial cities upset them, probably. I don't know. Like that feels more believable than reduce the population of Earth because what's it say on the spreadsheet? And the word will burn in an inferno of smudged. But it's what is this motivation? Like I can tell we're meant to think that I'm going to call him Max Storm because Frank Wright sounds crap. Like we can tell he's not feeling very well at this point. Or is that volume 3? Am I getting mixed up?
It's a bit later.
No. Yeah. Well, spoilers everybody for the next part of this podcast. He's not feeling very well. I'm going to pass on because I'm just getting annoyed now.
No, that's completely fair. I just wanted to throw it out there that, I said earlier about there not being any splash pages. There is actually one in issue 2 that I have just seen from flicking through, so I apologise for being wrong. I'm just going to say, though, it isn't very good. It is very poorly framed. There's one dude in the corner being eaten by a zombie. There's a bunch of stuff happening near the floor, and there's a big open space in the top left. So we have one big splash page so far, potentially in the entire series, and it's crap. James, what did you think of issue 2?
Oh, is that the one in the morgue?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't count that because it's not like it is a full page, but like I want those big double page ones. You know?
Yeah. Oh, totally. We're never going to get that out of this.
Yeah. But yeah, so my first note about this issue, and I think James is being uncharacteristically deep here with this comic. I think that this first page shows you that there might have been a disconnect between the writing and the art, because there's something I can't remember what his name is. What is it? Dr. Shiner, maybe? He looks at this pickle person covered in burger relish and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, but you're not supposed to be here."
Yeah.
How do you look at somebody that looks that decrepit? And also, you just saw that person. also in the morgue. You just saw that person.
Yep.
Like, how do you look at that and go, well, you're not meant to be here, buddy, and then you get bit, you know? Yeah, I when I looked at that, I thought that was so strange. It's like that I feel like there was a disconnect there because it's so obvious, and it kind of just it exacerbated the low quality of the entire comic. Like when I saw that, okay, we're here now. So my other problem with the comic is Leon doesn't really do much, and you see a lot of it in issue 2, where Leon opens door, has phone in ear, talks, leaves. Like, that is literally all he does in this comic. You will see him occasionally come into a room, right, with an M16 or like an M1911 and shoot something in the head, and then he will leave again. And he'll go, I need someone important to talk to. You know? Like, he doesn't do anything, right? Much like this comic doesn't do anything, like, to the overall canon or the overall story or its own story. Like, he doesn't do anything. He's useless. Like, throughout this entire thing, he's meant to be this hotshot dude, and all he's doing is being on the phone and going through doors. I need to go see what's his face. Okay, I'm there now. All right, well, now that's sorted. I need to go here. It's a very A to B to C to Z, and it was very obvious that he was doing that. And that was very obvious that was how he was written. A very one-dimensional narrative for Leon. And yes, Leon is one-dimensional, but like he's one-dimensional in video games where you can be interactive with him. There is no excuse for that to be in a comic. Like, you have all this work, all this free estate. You got the whole of Pennsylvania to work with. It's Pennsylvania, right? Right?
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
is
Pittsburgh, that's the one.
In Pennsylvania.
So yeah, it's a bad issue. Like that one, just to finish my section, there was one bit that really made me laugh, and there's a page where Leon, you see him sweat, and he starts shooting people, and he's yelling, and then the next page, someone turns to him, a police officer turns to him and says, "You are much too damn calm, pal."
And he says, "Somebody has to be."
Yeah.
Oh, James.
Yeah,
I
literally,
laughed.
there's like a panel below the one where he's shouting.
He's screaming his head off, yeah.
Yeah.
It made me laugh so much. It doesn't really improve. Like the art, again, the artwork is great. Like I really like it, but none of it is just sewn together well. With this issue, and all of the character to character stuff, I just was not interested in, because as you said at the start, Si, they all sound the same. They all sound like they're in the same, like, they're from the same mind, and you shouldn't feel that when you're looking at a piece of a story.
The writing in general is just terrible. When you just read, here's just all the dialogue from the first, page 2 and 3. So I'm just going to read with very little context. Guy gets screamed, so he get bitten, so he's screaming, the other character goes, no, police, freeze, I said freeze, sweet Jesus, nice shot, officer, thanks, what the hell was that? That's all the dialogue on 2 pages. That's page 2 and 3. It's just, there's just no writing here, which is a real shame, because we've gone from one issue where nothing happens to a second issue where loads of stuff happens, but you don't care because it's poorly written and nothing has been set up for you to care. We know there are bombs, they apparently make zombies for reasons that aren't really explained now or ever, and now we're in the thick of it, but are we in the thick of it? Because I don't know what's going on. It's not good. Kelsey, have you talked about issue 2 yet?
No, I mean, I've got a couple of things to add, mostly in agreement, as always. As I said earlier, just the opening of issue 2 should have been the opening to the whole thing. I think that would have been so much better. And then just picking out a few choice bits. I will say, like, it does start to feel more like Resident Evil because of the zombies, and we've got the conspiracy unfolding and stuff like that. Very Resident Evil stuff there. And very importantly, we've got a full panel shot of a map, which I quite enjoy, and I feel like that's a direct reference to the games there. But then there's also some unintentionally hilarious moments, like the one James pointed out, which is just like Leon just going backwards and forwards from screaming his head off to being calm, screaming his head off, and then somebody's like, "Oh, you're really calm." But something else that really made me laugh is just after they look at the map and he hears over the radio that dead people are getting up and walking around. And he's just like, say that again. You heard me. Dead people are getting up and biting other people. And then it cuts to Leon and he just goes, not again. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like the writing in this is so bad. And I was going to touch on this towards the end, but like the writer of this comic book is really prolific and has done a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like this is probably this was like a day's work for him or something like that. Like, and this, maybe that's all he was given. I'm not going to hold too much against him. It was just like, we got to do this. Have you got a day? Just, scribble it down. And this is what he's come up with, because there's just no substance to it. But yeah, I do like that bit of the action is good. The hospital action is the morgue stuff, all the shooting, blam 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 blam. Like all that. Some really good artwork. Leon screaming, into the phone. But then that scene in the diner it pretty much is what rounds off the comic, I think. Yeah, I do like that. So we introduce who do we get? We get Riley talking to Frank, and I like this guy. I like the guy talking about his holy mission. And yes, it's all a bit cheesy, but I like that the comic rounded up on this, and this setting was cool. So, yeah, despite the lack of substance, which you've all mentioned, and the unintentional, hilarious dialogue, I wasn't I wasn't chucking it in the bin. I was like, okay, the stuff's happening now, at least. So I was ready for issue 3.
My final positive is that I thought the zombies looked okay. For comic book zombies, they're fun to look at. I don't know if they necessarily match up with the way that Infinite Darkness as a show looks. They would have been nice to be a bit more consistent in that way. But as like gross, decaying zombies in comic books go, yeah, fine. They look fun. Yes, Keith DeCandido is worth saying. Very prolific in terms of tie-ins and stuff. He's done a lot of comic books for Star Trek and Farscape, but also he's wrote a load of books as well, novellas and tie-in novels for just various things. Again, lots of Star Trek. He wrote the adaptation for Serenity, as in the Firefly movie, to book, the Alien Isolation book, and this is the one, though, for me. He wrote the tie-in books for Resident Evil Apocalypse, and Resident Evil Extinction. So suddenly things start to make sense now.
Wait, we're doing them at some point, aren't we?
We might, just for fun. And by fun,
Are
I
we
mean
saying
torture.
is this canon to the movie universe and not actually Infinite Darkness? Is Leon Johan Herb?
Whatever his name was. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue on issue 3, the plot of which is as follows. The second bomb at the community centre has led to more zombies, of course. Leon visits his partner, quote unquote, in the hospital. Frank's laptop, which has been hacked into by the boys in the lab, yields maps of the community centre and the PNC park on MapQuest, where a third bomb is found. Leon shoots some zombies at the community centre, I think, is what I've put here. I can't remember if he went there or not. I think he did shoot some zombies in this issue. Somebody shot some zombies. This one was very similar to issue 2 in that way, really. Here's the location where something bad happened, and then we shoot some zombies. And for what it's worth there, I kind of made fun of it, but at this point I was very much feeling like the writing in this is like somebody has finally been able to write something in the remote vicinity of a cop show, and they're like, I'm going to pull out all the obvious things. It's password protected, got to get down to the lab, and all this is classified, and all that stuff. And there's so many damn characters. All different government bodies in this. We have the police and the morgue people and the security and the SWAT guys and Leon's partner. And there's just so many government dudes, and they're all, at this point, a giant blender of boring. Kelsey, what did you think of issue number 3?
Yeah, it's starting to fall apart. Like the bomb plot thing is really, by this point, not grabbing me at all. When I was reading this, it started to remind me of I don't know if anybody remembers, but like the original X-Files movie is like, everyone was so excited for it, but then really disappointed because it's like the least X-Files thing ever made. There is like touches of extraterrestrial stuff in it, but it's mostly police officers talking to each other. And I think it opens with a bomb plot. I think there's a bomb disposal scene and stuff, because I'm sure Terry O'Quinn's in it. But yeah, and I was reading it, and there's a lot of this. This feels so X-Files, but the bad X-Files. Do you know what I mean? And like you mentioned, all the different government agents, all the characters. There's some of the zombies in this stuff don't look as good as well, but I think they might be because they're freshly turned. I'm just kind of flicking through the pages again to try and remind myself. But yeah, there was just a lot of Leon zipping from place to place, casually shooting people in the head and then moving on to another place. And it's very hard to follow. He stops for a breath at the hospital bedside, which, again, I didn't hate that. I was like, okay, they're trying to build something here, show that he's got some kind of, emotional connection to this guy, even if it's not very deep at all. But it's just, there's nothing really scary about it. Bomb plot's not grabbing me. More terrible dialogue. I think Leon, I've got here, he says, if I'm right, and I'm pretty sure I am, that's where he's talking about, where the bombs come, the people turning into zombies, being infected by the T virus. It's just a lot of dull stuff over and over again, but it does have my favourite panel in the whole thing with the zombie's eye coming out of its head, which I mentioned earlier, so that's good. Yeah, just characters appearing out of nowhere, and then they're on the page for like 3 panels, and then they die. It's just a bit chaotic, and you don't really know where to follow it. And it's a shame because the previous issue, I thought, as wild as it was, started to have some kind of it started to grab me. But here, I really sort of started to fall off. So yeah, my notes are so thin. It's just Leon going places really fast, shooting people, and it not making much sense.
Lots of men potentially with goatees. Formulaic is the word that I've got at this point, because even if issue 1 had no monsters, it at least set up, bombs and intrigue, and as you say, there's a conspiracy or whatever, and we have a perpetrator and fake name, we've got a villain, potential cat and mouse chase. But at this point, we've now just had 2 issues of Leon going from place to place shooting zombies and telling other people to shoot them in the head and being superior to everyone else. And yeah, it's just formulaic and no twists and turns in issue 3. We're just literally doing the same thing we did before in a straight line. We are attempting to solve the Bond plot and failing so far. It's very, very dull. Steve, what did you think of issue 3?
I have 2 notes written down. One is world's hardest politician. She's got half her face missing. Scratched out. Oh, never mind. She dies later on in the issue. And the other thing is, why is this a prequel to Infinite Darkness? Now, I don't want to get on the soapbox so much, but by this point, we have had no real tie-ins. We haven't any mention of the Mad Dogs unit, no mention of Wilson and his evil virus. It's literally just meh. We have a community hall exploding and a very, very grumpy man who then appears to have a heart attack and reactivate as a zombie pretty instantly. And that's fundamentally all we've got at this juncture that ties it towards in the direction of the actual Netflix show. As my colleagues have said, there's a cavalcade of violence and exposition that will basically culminate in we have to go to the park because there's another bomb. Oh no! I'm not feeling it. I've got to be honest. I'm at this point, I am not feeling it. And I've got to look at my notes now for part 4, which I'm kind of reticent to do.
It's starting to blur now as well, because I've got a note here for issue 3, but I'm not convinced that it's from issue 3. But at one point, there's a character that mentions, there's been 2 bombs go off. But somewhere else in the story, they established that only one of them is publicly known about. The other one in the museum was a gas leak that led to an explosion, not a bomb. But after that, they have a character go, the 2 bombs that went off, just a civilian. And it's like, well, hang on, if I can pick that hole, why did you guys not read through this? Like, what's going on here? It's just a very glaring inconsistency for me, considering that there isn't a lot of dialogue in this. It's quite a short run, and many pages are just people screaming and swearing and saying reload or good shot or whatever, and not a lot else. But yeah, it's not going great. James, sorry, go on, Steve.
I like Tie Splitters 2 and Sure Did As Much Anyone, great shot, top left, and whatnot. But there's a lot of that in this, and not a lot of actual plot to say it's meant to be terrorists trying a really rubbish attempt at downsizing the population. It's I don't want to say monotonal for a violence zombie-filled comic, but it's getting that way.
Yeah. James, issue 3.
The beginning of what?
Yeah, exactly.
What is it the beginning of? Because we get to issue 3, and this is where I really, like, my brain was really starting to unravel. It's just like, you know, I was, you know, there is a scene as well where at the community center beginning here where I'm going to set the scene for you. 2 police officers or like a crime scene investigators go in, and a police officer going through the wreckage. And I'm going to swear here, Si.
Yep.
But one of them says, "Way to go, you asked me. You asked me, there ain't no good ways. I don't know, I kind of like the idea of dying in bed, surrounded by 50 beautiful women. That's a pretty damn big bed you got there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, king-sized. You're going to need more than king-sized. You're going to need the whole country to fit. Zombie. Pickle man." You know?
Yep.
Truly
Thrilling and good use of Page.
It was awful. Like, the pacing... Like, the pacing throughout has been pretty awful, but, like, it really is very obvious in this 3rd issue, because, like, you're introduced to a new police officer at the beginning of this. He shoots 4 zombies. Someone says he should have his badge for that. It's settled in one panel. Then the next day goes by. Then it's the next day. Just another day goes by.
Yep.
Right, and then it's brought up in one panel again, and then the guy who said it gets killed.
I mean,
Like,
that conversation you just said made me laugh because as I said, I pointed out some of the dialogue just feels like, oh, cool, I get to write a cop show. That kind of conversation is, oh, cool, I get to write a zombie thing. So we should have 2 characters having a really innocuous, normal conversation, and then they get killed. It's such a horror trope,
Yeah.
and they're usually about like sex or whatever,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they get bitten. You know, just
Yeah.
so by the numbers.
it was like, I can imagine, I know this is like a cop-out, and it's kind of like a buzzword to use right now, but I imagine someone, like you said earlier, Kels, I think it was Kels that said it, like, about the artist for a day, you know, writers for a day, they're probably told, you know, and I'm wondering if he just put prompts into a chat GPT.
Or he just wrote something like this, and they were like, yeah, that'll do, and took his first draft.
Yeah. And it's like, because a lot of this just feels like it's just been shoehorned, hammered in. It's like, you will see this with your eyeballs no matter what, you know. And then we have like this, and normally, you know, a scene where you're introduced back to you're introduced to a peaceful scene after a really chaotic scene is a good break, except there's not enough of them, and if there are them, they go on way too long. Or they make no sense within the narrative or the context of the issue that you're actually reading. Like, while this is all happening, while everything's going to crap, the world is falling apart in Pittsburgh, you know, Liam goes to the hospital and checks on his friend.
Gonna step in before I have to rush to the next zombie killing site. Yeah.
Literally, because every single other panel that we've seen him in, he's run into the room, slammed the door open, and had a phone to his ear, right? And like, "I'm Special Agent Numbnuts, and I've come here to kill some pickles.
Get me this guy," as he's always doing. I need to talk to this person. That's his whole thing. Oh,
But he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, do you know what? It's been a hard day. I'm just gonna sit down here, mate. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit down here and let's have a chat. I know you might be dying, but."
Exactly. I mean, James, you said at this point your brain was unraveling, and I can feel like this is only going to get worse as we go through. But one of my final notes here is that we have, at this point, issue 3, 3 villains introduced now. We have Mac Storm. We have the guy that he met in the cafe to talk about, in the diner, to talk about the plan, the holy mission. And we have this mysterious CEO lady, Eloise Font, on the phone talking to someone. And at this point, we have 2 issues to resolve the story and make use of all 3 villains. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, how the hell are you going to do this? And to your point, and to Steve's point, we don't yet have anything that ties this into Infinite Darkness, the beginning. Like, how is this the beginning of Infinite Darkness? And now, reading the file Eugene's Diary from Resident Evil Village, Carrionto, who you can find on YouTube at Bob's Reading Corner.
February 1st. Sacrifice 2 goats to Mother Miranda. February 3rd. offered wool to Mother Miranda. She instructed I find her a list of drugs and tools in the next few days. What for, I wonder. February 8th. No messages from Mother Miranda. Yet the livestock won't stop their ruckus. February 9th. I was instructed to take the items to the cave church at sunrise. But what I saw was frightful. The great four lords were there, and Mother Miranda was holding a child. She whispered something and touched the child. I can't explain it well, but the child turned into a white crystal. Then she... I couldn't help but speak up, and I asked her why she did such a thing. Mother Miranda just smiled at me. This is the chosen child. She will return to her original form no matter what befalls her. Then she gave each lord a part of the crystal in a flask, and they left. I forgot to bow to Mother Miranda before I fled. I'm still shaking. What did she do? What is that child?
Fair to say we're all pretty much in the same place by the end of issue 3, so let's get on to issue 4, where disposal experts disarm the bomb at PNC Park. Frank is admonished by his anti-population fringe group for being a bit of a sort of, having a potential second thought about everything, and also for being under the weather at this point. Leon chats to the police chief about what we as the audience already know about the group and what their goals are, so that's fun, who are now targeting multiple bridges into the city. And then Frank Wright calls Eloise Font, who is revealed to be associated with the Secretary of Defense, Wilson. So finally, we got something. Like, this one's a little bit better. And as much as I still hate that it's like, now we have to have him talk to the police chief, and we're going to say a bunch of stuff that you pretty much figured out anyway, or we told you, at least the pacing actually changed here. Like, there was a chance for characters to talk. There is still far too many characters who are like the most boring NPC imaginable, and I cannot tell you anybody's name from this comic because they're not important. They all blend together and they all die very quickly, but there is some conversation happening in this issue, which was a nice change of pace at least. James, what did you think of issue 4?
Code 1? Code 2? Is it code 1, code 2, or code 3? I don't know, comic. You need to tell me. Give me context to what you're trying to explain. It got to that, like when it got to the bomb thing and they were just saying codes. I'm like, oh, I don't know. You haven't explained anything. You said, oh, I don't know, because it's that old chestnut of like, all the wires are the same, which is fine. I don't mind that, right? But them code 1, code 2ing, I felt like they were trying to reset a phone from 2003, like it's like it's like it was really, really silly. And I mean, you say Psylocke start to come a little bit together, but I mean, by this point, I was just so bored.
I want to clarify. I was still not having a good time.
Okay. Yeah, I was so bored by with this issue, and then Leon goes back to hospital again. He goes to visit his buddy again. While the world is falling apart, Pittsburgh is falling into the hellhole. And then he dies. Oh, big sad. Oh. Wish we knew him. Wish we knew anything about him.
If only he hadn't got shot in the first issue, we might have actually had some kind of reason to care.
Yeah, like instead of spending those 7, 8, 9, 10 pages just doing nothing, we could have had some character development maybe. But I think this comic is allergic to character development. As soon as somebody gets just a niggling of character development, they're killed immediately. It's just, and it's like the very sense of it just sparks them off. Yeah. There is a lot of chatting in this. We see the obvious bad person with the gold. She got golden fingernails, which is pretty sick, actually. I kind of like that. But at the same time, we don't really learn much. There is a point where you're learning. There's a guy on a TV screen, I remember, who looks very much like if Trump had his head squished,
Yeah.
like, and he was just like rabbling on, clearly meant to be like some kind of, rabbling politician on a TV screen. It was very funny. I did actually giggle at that point. Yeah, sorry, I don't have much because there's no substance to the story. It's very hard to actually try and
engage with
follow it. Yeah, engage. There's a good way of putting it. Like, because I feel like they got lost. Whoever was writing this, and then Candido when he was doing this, and then when, like, because the way I understand comics work when it comes to the artwork and the writer is that the writer does the story, and then it's kind of like a script or a screenplay. They have direction, right? So like they're also the director as well, I guess, like of the comic.
Sure.
And they will say to the artist, okay, I want this panel to be like this. Like, give me, while this is being said, I want this like portrayed. I'm getting this from like, this is information I know from Marvel comics and Dark Horse, but this is Tokyo Pop, so maybe they do things differently. I wouldn't be surprised, judging by the quality of this comic, right? But yeah, that's how it's done. And I normally with big comic book companies, and this clearly none of that was done with this, because there is no connection. Like, I could see what they were trying to do, and I think the buddy cop thing could work.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely could, but it needed more. It needed quality. Maybe it needed more issues. Maybe it needed less pages, like, to explain certain stuff. Maybe you could just get rid of some stuff and actually make it a prequel, because it's not a prequel. It doesn't deserve the name Infinite Darkness, and Infinite Darkness wasn't even that good. But we were
putting it lightly.
But we were hoping that it was going to add. This comic was going to add something.
Infinite Darkness, by the way, I just want to point this out a bit behind the scenes, if I can say this, James, was the episode where it wound up being me, Steve, and Kelsey doing it. James was going to do it, but he dropped out because he has nothing good to say about the show, if I remember correctly, and didn't want to just come on and just talk trash about it, which is what the episode wound up being, because it was a trash show. So it's appropriate that the comic book really isn't any different. I don't really mind ragging on it as hard as we are, because it's just pointless. Absolutely pointless. Kelsey, what did you think of issue 4?
It feels like the whole thing just feels like a treatment for a comic rather than like a fleshed out story.
Yeah.
Really disappointing. I did love the evangelicals on the TV that James mentioned. They're blaming the bombings on swaying from the word of the Lord, which, I don't know, that just all felt very current. And, like, I've been watching The Boys recently as well, and it's a bit like that. Reminded me of Firecracker. The detective suddenly dying was, again, unintentionally hilarious. It's 4 panels, the hospital scene, the hospital location, Leon arriving by his bedside. When I read it first, I was like, did he know something, and did he like bite a cyanide pill or something? Because Leon's like, hey, how you feeling? And he's like, oh, like hammered. And then he's like, I got a few questions for you. Oh, what about the population correction movement? And he's just dead. And it's like, I was like, oh, did he know something? And did he just off himself? But no, I don't think it goes that deep. I think he literally did just randomly die. And his purpose was to, just get shot in the head at the opening of issue 5. Just not much to say. Again, I did quite like the interaction between Frank and Riley. So this is location number 2. They have like these 3 like kind of clandestine meetings, or at least they have 2, and then Riley meets with his, Bilderberg group type people towards the end. This time they're in a park in the dark in like a little pavilion type thing, which I quite liked. They're discussing their plans, and he's trying to tell Frank not to cave, and Frank's having second thoughts. And so, if I want to say something positive, I liked those 2 characters and what they were doing. That's here. Fair. But yeah, aside from that, it's just more nonsense out of Leon's mouth. And there's just not many redeeming factors. I started to lose track of what was happening, but yeah, I did my best to stick with it.
You can tell where we're at when my notes are literally as sparse as, shout out to the bomb squad guy who actually sorted this problem out with over 2 minutes to spare, which is a nice change to the usual 2 seconds in most media where it's like down to the wire. He had a whole 2 minutes. He could have swigged from a can of Coke and taking his time. It's like, hang on, let me think about this a little bit more. So I thought that was kind of fun. And also, right, I can't believe this hasn't come up yet. Maybe I've missed something here. Leon's partner got shot in the arm or whatever, and he comes back as a zombie. Why?
Yeah.
Why? The bomb makes people into zombies. Sure, I guess it makes no sense, but whatever. It releases a gas, maybe. This guy's been in the hospital. I don't really get the connection. Is there now just gas everywhere, and if you die in Pittsburgh now, you just become a zombie? I don't know. It was dumb. Like, I didn't get it.
Yeah, I feel like there's one line where there's like a question about something being possibly airborne because they tell Leon's got a hazmat suit on, don't they, or something. I think that's in the next issue, but that is the only it's not expanded upon or revealed or confirmed.
It's just there so that he can shoot his quote-unquote partner that he's known for all of about 6 minutes. It's just.
I thought this was that injection. There's like a brief panel of someone being injected.
Is there? Okay.
Episode 3.
Yeah, but isn't
Volume 3.
That's not the virus, isn't it? Is it, or what is that? That's an inhibitor to the virus.
Yeah.
Okay.
We learned
it could have both in it, to be fair. Just devil's avocado. It could have had both in it, Kels.
Yeah, possibly.
Wilson would do that. He's that kind of bonkers villain. I don't know. I'm just trying to
on that point, Steve.
Well, Wilson's known for that. Yeah.
Famous Resident Evil villain Wilson. What did you think of issue 4?
Honestly, I'm not on the same page as everybody else. I feel like it's just flowing into complete misery. Much like everybody else, the bomb getting disposed in 2 seconds. It's a nice change, but I was bored to tears with this dialogue between Riley and Frank. I'm busy thinking, what is Frank's motivation in all this? Why is he doing this? I get Riley's a nut job. Frank just seems like a miserable dude who's sick who does bombs for him. Like, the rank and file stormtrooper he isn't, but he kind of feels like, I'm just here for the day job.
Yeah.
And then Eloise Fount, traditional Resident Evil name villain. She's not really established much in this issue other than being the shady person in the background.
Yeah.
As for Pascazzi's death, alas, I knew him well enough to remember his surname. That's as far as it's going. I'm sorry, everybody.
That's all right.
This issue suffers from another 5 panels of exposition between a detective whose name I cannot remember and Leon. And half the time, Leon still looks like shaved Alan Wake. Like it's not doing it for me. This issue's very light on action in comparison. If you exclude the bomb stuff as well, it's more into trying to be a conspiracy thriller, but the conspiracy is that we all know who the villains are, and they are now just need to find a way to meet the heroes. The end. It's unimpressive. And James, having said, was this written in ChatGPT, I'm starting to fear that it may have had a hand in it, to be honest with you. But, I don't want to throw the writer directly under the bus. They've done a lot of work over the years, but it's coming apart at the seams for me.
All right, let's finish it off then with issue number 5. Picasso is indeed a zombie now. Leon shoots him. Eloise, here we go. We finally get our connection to Infinite Darkness. Eloise tells Wilson that the inhibitor chips are not stopping viral infection, revealing that the bombs and the group using them are actually being controlled by a higher power in the government for a totally different motive. So just to clarify that, the government is basically... they have a mole within it, which is Frank and potentially more, planting the bombs. They're all about population control. The government, on Wilson's side, they care about the inhibitor chips. Again, see Infinite Darkness. We can make you tyrants and control you. That kind of, fairly basic Resident Evil stuff, to be honest. Frank gives Leon the information to take down the group, which he does. Leon flies away in a helicopter onwards to the events of Infinite Darkness. I'll let everyone else go, but I'm just going to throw the obvious thing out here. James, you said it earlier. What is this the beginning of? This isn't the beginning of anything. This is the middle, apparently. We're already just... Wilson is doing inhibitor chip things, and this takes place a day before, presumably, Infinite Darkness. So we're kind of stepping into the middle. So it is completely pointless. It adds nothing. All it adds is Wilson was experimenting with this the day before Infinite Darkness. Yeah, no. Steve, what do you think of issue 5?
The Mad Dogs unit and all that stuff that kicks off, the preceding inciting incident for Infinite Darkness is set 6 years prior. Why exactly
That's the beginning.
is Wilson experimenting? Why is Wilson experimenting with the inhibitor chip 6 years down the line after already been using it at least on Jason? Like
incredible.
that was my takeaway when the big reveal where Wilson's big forehead appears.
I'm so
Like,
glad
what?
you either rewatched it or just remember that, because I don't remember anything about the series. So thank you. That's really important context. Genuinely.
It feels like there are parts of the timeline not matching up here, or at least motivation's not quite gelling. Also, big bad terrorist group gets two-shotted over 2 pages. It's like, what was the point?
Yeah.
What was the point? Discount Veltro really are phoning it in, is all I'm saying. We have had many a terrorist organisation in the Resident Evil universe at this point, and most of them are crap. All right? At least Los Illuminados had the good decency to come back for a movie. No, not happy. Not happy. Frank just dies quietly, alone. It's like she just switches him off. He might be a zombie in his own room somewhere. Yeah. What a miserable affair.
Yeah, all the villain build up, and they're taken down immediately. And also, whilst being revealed to be just a bunch of idiots, essentially, like Riley was completely being used by this. Steve, as you're right, Eloise, who's never going to come back again, we'll never hear from her again, because it's not really important, because she's associated with Wilson, who is done now as of the end of Infinite Darkness, right? He gets taken down for it, so...
Yeah, Jason smushes him.
Yeah, so she'll probably never come back, because she's got no reason to, so cool. All the villains in this, kind of pointless. KDB, what did you think of issue 5?
Yeah, I was gobsmacked at how they were foiled at the end, to be honest, because I will say again, like the log cabin setting, I was like, oh, this is very Bohemian Grove. Look at these evil bastards having their little, their greater good meeting. And I liked that. And then Leon and the, I guess, police officer or officers or whoever it is, they jump in. Leon dives in and saves the day without even breaking a sweat. There's a hilarious panel of him jumping over bullets that are being shot into the boxes, which I did laugh at. And yeah, I was like, oh, he's shot him and it's over. And that's that done. And everything just happens at kind of lightning speed. And I was disappointed because I was putting some faith in Riley. And it's like, oh no, like you said, Si, they were just complete idiots and they couldn't do anything. Again, I think maybe this isn't a horror. Maybe it's just a comedy, because earlier in the issue, Leon, when he finds out that Schwartz is off sick from work, he's like, I need to speak to her immediately. And he's like screaming on the phone, somebody give me her number or whatever. And then there's a shot of him in the car driving and he's like leaving her a message. Abigail, this is Leon. I'm sorry to hear that you're out sick. It could be a precursor to something really bad. You need to check into the hospital now. And you turn the page and she's like in the bedroom with her husband screaming at him and he's going, no. And I just... Yeah, I could
It was
not.
like something out of. Do you remember the Batista Netflix movie, Army of the Dead? It was just.
Yes.
It was like that kind of like. You're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, it was way. And like I say, I don't think it's supposed to be a comedy, but it's just too funny. Yeah, so really, really laughed at that. And yeah, I just couldn't really get on board with. What's her name? Fount. And because at the end I was like, oh, Did she appear in the show? I couldn't remember. I did consider going back and rewatching it, but obviously she didn't. And, I wonder, just as we've been talking, I'm thinking, like, was this maybe written, did the writer, were they even privy to anything that happened in the show? Maybe they were given Wilson's name and they were like, oh, and you've got to write a story about Leon and that's it, or something like that, because... By the time it ends up, it's like, oh, he's getting in the helicopter. There he goes, off to Infinite Darkness. And it's like, what was the point? What was the point of all of this? I don't really understand what it was supposed to do to enhance the plot of Infinite Darkness or begin the plot. And it's a shame because there was a couple of moments through reading the previous issues that I quite enjoyed despite the silliness. And then issue 5, I was stunned at how they were just thwarted with no resistance whatsoever. And and then Leon's like, well done, see you later. And then just gets on his helicopter and goes. And
goes somewhere else where he can be like, not again, when it happens.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, disappointing. Not anything else to say about issue 5 specifically.
James, any thoughts on the final issue?
Muted again.
It's 3 for 3.
I'm doing so well. I am so professional. Yeah. That last. I'll talk about the last scene because just shortly because there is something like it's not good. It's something. But yeah, the two buddy cop of Leon and unnamed helmet guy who I don't know the name of.
Yeah.
And don't care about. But
Mother
he
named
says,
him that, James. He's very proud.
That's good for him.
Yeah.
He says, I hate these damn standoffs. Me too, so let's end it, says Leon. And then he rolls in and saves the day.
Yep.
What a hero.
Like,
Do you think that leap that he does is specifically a video game reference for the fact that
It's
those in game
ridiculous.
it's iframes? Am I reading too far into that? Is that
no, yeah, I can see it.
There's like
He's
a bullet
getting
going
high praise.
in front of his knee and behind his thigh. It's just so weird.
Just to just add on to the
Quick time of that.
stupidity as well of this the PCM, is it?
PMC.
pretty crap movement?
I
Yeah.
don't remember. Yeah, it's not that. Sure.
Pretty crap movie.
I guess it is
we'll call
PCM, population control. I guess.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I found it very funny. Another like probably unexpected comedy moment was when the newsreader in the blue blazer, the lady on the screen, she says, PCM sent a video to every local TV and radio station, as well as the Pittsburgh police, which, by the way, we're going to play for you right now. You know, and then the next thing is like this dark, mysterious man, you know, on screen who's in the shadow, and then he comes out of the shadow and he has a face mask for some reason. How about you just stayed in the shadows? That would have, you know, now the police have something. But the thing that made me laugh about it is that I don't understand why big bads would send their like threat into local news stations and police, right, and expect it to be played.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be. That's why in movies and stuff,
kind of like the
they always get
reverse of solving. Like that is giving into terrorism, surely.
exactly. Like it's like that's why they always have an IT guy who's like, oh, I can connect this to every TV station, and you know, like I can hack into the network. You know, that's why they have that, because they're not going to play you silly little video, you silly man.
What's
Like,
funny about it for me? Sorry, I was gonna say what's funny is they sent
go
it
ahead.
in, and they're like, "Oh, we sent it in advance." So
Yeah.
in it, we brag about how we've done all these things, but we haven't because they've been foiled. I was like, "Okay, you haven't even taken the villains down yet. You've already undermined them. That is hysterical. Well done, writing."
And you know, there was so one thing. I think the reason why I get so passionate about these failures is because one of my favorite kind of tropes in TV and movies and stuff and comics, just any kind of media like that, is constantly saying to myself, why is this happening? What's the reasoning for this? You know, and then slowly as you go through those answers are either explained or they're alluded to, right? And then the final act, or the act 4 normally is, and here's the real reason, you know, and it's it's like some kind of twist. There was a small part of me in the back of my mind was like, maybe that'll happen with this.
Right.
But when it got to the final few pages with the panels and Leon just like murdering everybody, and, you know, I was like, no. And then when I got to the final page with the helicopter, because I did watch the Netflix show as well,
Oh, okay.
and the only thing that survives in the show from the comic, other than is it Wilson?
Wilson, yeah.
Other than Wilson, is the mention of the helicopter.
I'm sure. Of course. I mean, it's
Because
Resident Evil.
because at the beginning, they're all in the meeting room and they're talking about going to meet the president, and then he says, "Oh, Leon's coming over from another mission in a helicopter, and he'll be here soon." You know,
nice.
and that's the only other mention. But I don't want to spend any more time on this.
Just no satisfaction was there from finishing it. Just nothing. Just very empty and hollow feeling, which I imagine is the state of you guys' notes for the last 2 prompts that I gave you before we recorded this. But I'll open it up anyway. And does anybody have anything to say about the characters and the characterization in Infinite Darkness, the beginning, that hasn't already been said? You know, just in case you wrote some notes, you might as well use them. Steve, any thoughts on characters?
Riley is a flipping pointless villain. Like, this isn't so much a note, so much as he just seems to be the grumpy guy who admonishes Frank, and then goes on to, yes, our plans are proceeding smoothly, having been foiled our entire time. Dies. 100% patsy. If this was a better written comic, I'd be upset that Eloise is going to be left by the wayside, because it's always nice to have a scheming bad guy who gets away with it and comes back in a future installment. Doesn't seem to happen for Resident Evil. We have characters that are left by the wayside all the time, but it's normally a hero, not a villain. Alex excluded, and Jessica, Nikolai. But I could go on. The point is, I don't feel that here. The wasted potential can stay wasted.
Indeed, well said. I think with the villains in particular, as I said, they are so undermined by the end of it, and I guess that is intentional. Like, they are meant to be like, look, these guys were not really on the up and up of what was going on. They were being used, but any satisfying story, and I know this is meant to be a prequel to the show, but it means that your comic is unsatisfying as a result of it. It needs to have a good conclusion and a good final showdown, which this doesn't have. If we then moved on to an Eloise or whatever, and then her connection to Wilson got deleted, classic Resident Evil, the files get deleted at the end, so they don't know that she's working for the government, that would be something. But they're like, we're going to blow up the bridges, but by this point we've already had their last plan at the stadium foiled, so they know what wires to cut, and they know they're going to bomb the bridges, so they don't even get close to it going ahead. Like, there's literally the meeting between the sort of group, the PCM group or whatever, is them going, we really screwed this up. Like, oh no, it's all gone horribly wrong. How stupid do we now look? And it just makes you feel like, I'm an idiot too, because I've not invested in this. I mean, monetarily I have, but it's like, I wasted my time reading this. Like, why didn't you give me a satisfying conclusion? And it feels like the writers knew that's what they were doing. But yeah, anyway. Kelsey, what do you think of the characters in this?
Not much to say. It's just a really weird depiction of Leon. And I think because pretty much all the characters, like we've touched on, all just sound the same. There's no character to the characters. And, this is Leon. This is post RE4 Leon, and he just has a complete lack of personality. There's no snappy one-liners. There's nothing, he's stone-faced or screaming his head off like the entire time, and he does nothing that makes you like him in this little outing that he's got. And I was just reading it like, who is this? Who is this? Despite the lack of coherence with the story and stuff, it's like, well, at least it stars Leon. It's like, does it? I don't think so. Really odd. And like, I've been quite kind to Riley and Frank and their dynamic. I do think, despite the weakness, it was like one of the stronger parts of the of the graphic novel, and it was like the thread through it, with their meetings and then Frank having a change of heart and stuff. But the payoff is all rubbish and all that, as we've established. So disappointing, and couldn't tell you the names of any of the other characters. I've forgotten the detective's name again. And Frank dies off panel, which is massively disrespectful to him, so he wasn't that important. And nothing to say. Just Leon's the star of the show, but it just doesn't feel like him at all.
100%. I think, if I remember rightly, we praised Infinite Darkness at least for getting a Leon that feels appropriately like it sits between RE4 quippy Leon and RE6 gritty sort of action hero, grizzled, miserable Leon. And had a bit of both. But Steve, absolutely on point with this, saying that this is Degeneration Leon and the fact that he has absolutely no personality. And to your credit, the detective, the secondary lead of the series, you could say, spends the entire thing in a hospital bed and gets infected for reasons we couldn't really establish. Just absolute nonsense. James, I'm going to kick it to you for characters. I also put as a heading POWs before I read this because I didn't know what we were going to get. Obviously, we only got zombies. I don't know if anybody's got anything to say, but James, go ahead.
I think I've already said everything I need to say about the zombies.
That's fair.
They look great.
Sure.
Characters. I mean, I do see, Kels, I see what you're saying about, the villains and the not villain. Like, I did. They were that was a nice page to look at. like because it was a bit, it was like a kind of, even though it was two villains or two people that you shouldn't like talking. Yeah, when they were on the page, I did read what they were putting more than I read anything else anyway, because everything else just felt like I also want to point out, because like Keith DeCandito, I've read a couple of his books before, and like one of my favorite books is Alien Isolation, and it might be like a step by step. I know this is a podcast about it, but just to give you context about his previous work as well, like he added some things in that story that I really, really enjoyed. He did just copy kind of the steps of the game, but he added things along the way, and they were good things. So we know he's capable of it, and we know he's you know, and he, you know, over the past 2 decades he's done a lot of work. So, and we know he can make characters. So like the fact I can't think of anything to say about these characters, because is really it's kind of painful. Yeah, you know, because I mean, in Alien Isolation, you know, he writes one of the best lines, which is "I'll see you on your 11th birthday," which was Ellen speaking to Amanda through a recording, and that's great character development. I didn't see anything like that in this. No, like nothing like that, because we didn't have the time with it, and he didn't build any of those characters. Didn't build that growth for us on the page for us to look at. I don't have anything else to say, because everyone else has said something that I agree with completely, and everybody's the same. Leon isn't Leon, and I'm also looking at the last page now. It says to be continued, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness Episode 1. It's like, it's not, though. There was no continuation here. There was no continuation of anything. Do you know what that word means? Anyway.
Speaking of looking at, I'm sat here flicking through issue 5 as well. Just a perfect example of what we were saying about saying the things that we hear on TV and stuff, rather than actually spending any time writing any story. There's a panel where Leon is going into the hospital to interrogate Frank, essentially. And I'm going to censor this, but the police officer says, there was a 911 call from Enlo, and the EMTs recognized the symptoms from the CDC bulletin, so they helicoptered him here. I recognized him from the Bolo. It's like, it's just a bunch of, you know, I know acronyms. I know what they mean. Great, man, who cares? Like, yes, to your point, I'm sure he's a very good writer where it counts elsewhere. Otherwise, he wouldn't continue to get work. I haven't read any of it, so I can't speak to it. But clearly, he's a lot better than this. And maybe it was a timing thing. Maybe it's the restrictions of 5 issues. But Jesus, what a dumpster fire. Anyone got any more points on? Like I said, BOWs, just zombies. I don't know if anybody got anything they want to say before we can finish this thing off.
Franchise is big and as, you know, wide as Resident Evil for monsters and stuff. The fact that it is just zombies, kind of mid. Like, you know, disappointing.
Not even a boss fight. Right.
No, not even a boss fight. Not a nary a whisker of a licker or a hunter. You know, nothing. And what? You could argue, you take Leon out of this, replace it with generic government man. It could be any government conspiracy / horror 100%. Thing with zombies in it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's wasted potential. Like, not even rats. They were big in Infinite Darkness for one scene.
Yeah, true. Hey, I mean, previous episodes of Comic Club saw us with giant infected penguin creature things, weren't they? So
too right.
Clearly, those are superior comic books. So let's talk about our overall feelings on this series. I think we know. I think I know where we're going to land with it. Steve, let's start with you. Where do you land with Infinite Darkness at the beginning? Is it better or worse than the show?
Oh my God, listeners, it is so peak. It is the best thing I've ever. No, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't want to be overly negative. I feel like my latest run of podcast stuff has been me ragging on whatever we've been talking about. This is awful.
Yeah.
This is terrible. Without a doubt, the worst Resident Evil thing with the suffix the beginning. Check out Resident Evil the beginning on Right First Day Spray. It's really good, actually. That I ever. Nice. Like, what is the point of this? It's not even a prequel, not really. Easily the worst prequel in the Resident Evil franchise. The most boring Leon, characters that go nowhere, a terrorist group that's pointless. Oh, and here's Wilson. Great! Like, nothing. It sets up nothing. It establishes that Leon was at Pittsburgh, some bombs went off, and now he's gone to work at the White House. Big lad's gone up to the top to meet his boss. Ooh. Yeah, no. If you haven't already read Infinite Darkness, the beginning, do yourself a favour. Don't have any fear. Don't have any terror. Skip it.
Very nice. Round of applause indeed. James, your final thoughts on Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, the beginning?
I wish it was better.
Yeah, me too.
I normally take these really bad, or not really bad, but I can normally see a direction, with these less than stellar entries from Capcom, and I know that probably Capcom is very loosely attached to this. Yeah, but I just can't see any good other than the artwork. But I mean, you could put that into any comic, right?
Yeah.
Put on
In
some
fact,
t-shirts.
while listening to this podcast, I've just been cutting out certain panels from this comic because I want to frame them.
Nice.
Because some of the artwork is good.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the artwork is very good, and I like it a lot. But the narrative, the direction, the pacing, the characters are all really, really poo, and it's really disappointed me. And you've disappointed James. That's what you've done. So,
Ouch. Look, for me, I think this is a really interesting time to have this series, this comic launch, because obviously we don't know where Resident Evil's going after 7 and 8. Some talk recently about it being kind of a monumental. We found what it is next, and it's monumental, or whatever the words were. And there are lots of people that say that 7 and 8 are too weird and wacky. I get that. But to go back to the bioterrorism era, which I do have nostalgia for, this is so unbelievably dull. Goodness me, it's so tired and overplayed regardless of when it came out. But in the wake of weird and wacky 7 and 8, I know which one I'd rather have out of this and in boring government conspiracy Leon Kennedy played by an empty tin can and with useless villains with no conclusion, with no connection to anything else. There's a lot of one-shot Resident Evil garbage, then this is going to be some of the most forgettable. I don't mind being harsh on this. This is the most vapid attachment you could have to an already vapid series. I don't know if I'll ever watch Infinite Darkness again because we've done the episodes on it. We did our Leon episode, so I don't have to watch it for that. We've done our Claire episode. That's it. So I think I don't have to.
you've done your time.
I don't think I ever have to go back and watch it again, and I don't think I will. And I'll absolutely never look at these again. I'm glad we talked about it. It was a good fun time ragging on it, to be quite honest, because it deserves it. This is hot flaming garbage. Kelsey, Infinite Darkness, the beginning. Final thoughts.
Steve said, what is the point of this? And I honestly think, and this is not me trying to be ridiculously cynical or insincere, I think they just needed to produce a piece of tie-in media to just try and make a few quid off of fans. And they did, it was the bare minimum, I believe, because we've talked about the writer and his prolific nature of his work. He's talented. And this is, I believe a proposal came on his desk. Do you have 2 days to write this? And he squeezed it in, and this is what we've got. Because that's the only way to kind of explain the complete lack of narrative, how it feels like a first draft, a treatment. Nothing happens. There's no coherent connection to the show, really. James, you also said you wanted it. You wish it was better. I do too, because think about what we could have had. Claire is missing from this for a start. And I just think the complete absence of Claire for a start is... I don't want to... you think, okay, let's rag on this for what it is and not what it isn't. But why is Claire not in this? This is just this weird Leon, like fest, and it's just so unbelievably dull, boring, like you said, Si. And yeah, I just think for something that has multiple shootouts, a couple of zombie hordes, bombs going off, it zips by. And I know it's supposed to be a prequel miniseries, but none of it gets any footing in a way that's engaging at all. And I really do believe it only exists to take money from hardcore fans who will buy everything that Resident Evil put out, like us. That's what we've done. We've bought it. And I agree. It's almost in a weird way, it is kind of cool that it exists, but it is because it is kind of fun to sit here and talk about it. If it was slightly longer, focused on a more small event, and like I said, had 3 issues dedicated to Claire, we could have had a nice little thing here. But I think it was rushed. I think they wanted tie-in merch, and yeah, it doesn't feel like the Leon I know. It's missing the main character from the show, the other main character from the show, and it's just, yeah. No, I tried to be sort of nice where I could. You know, it has those sort of little touches of X-Files as well, and it's a bit like 24. Leon's like Jack Bauer, and it's like, I see what I see what you're doing, but yeah, just not what I want. Didn't enjoy it. We'll never read it again, but I'll keep it on my shelf. I'll keep it on my shelf, and I'll keep it in my collection. So yeah, just Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, the beginning, abysmal, to be honest with you. Yeah, the end.
Indeed. The end, potentially, of Infinite Darkness, I guess. Series is clearly not getting another season at this
Not
point.
infinite.
Comic book is over. Not infinite whatsoever. Cast it into the void, because I think people have already forgotten about it even existing at this point. But there you go. Nothing else remains for me but to thank our contributors, our Patreons, and our listeners. Join the First Aid Spray Discord server to become part of our community and hear the show early and unedited. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and more. All of these links and all of our content can be found at faspraypod.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcasting apps. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a review where you can and spread the good word. Don't forget you can support the show by picking up some merch or our Patreon, which is patreon.com/FASprayPod for as little as $1 a month. In our next episode, we actually stick with Leon's political adventures as we head back into the CGI series with the next movie on our watch list. It's Film Club Resident Evil Damnation. Thank you to the panel. You can follow all of the Pueblo people individually. I'm at Signiac_123. Steve is at FB Steve Was Taken. James is at Moist Owl at OFF. And Kelsey is at K_D_B_. And finally, thank you for listening and have a good week.
It's the Robot Wars I've been watching, but 3, 2, 1, activate.
Rest in peace to John Anderson.
No, I'm sad.
Nobody got that reference.
Right, so
No.
Gladiators, John Anderson. 3, 2, 1.
You
Oh,
will
really?
go on my
yeah.
first whistle.
I remember that.
Yeah,
one.
Wow.
Was that him?
He died like 2 days ago.
Oh,
90 something.
Wow.
okay. It was
Yeah.
good innings. Good innings.
Good run.
That's old as
Rest in peace, but you're old as f***. Oh, dear.